Hey guys, PepperAmmy here. This week we are making ciabatta bread. Now this is a long fermented bread, and some people even make the dough over the course of a few days. Now in this recipe I'm going to be focusing on a 6-hour to an overnight ferment. Now the reason for the long ferment is to develop the flavour in the dough using a starter almost like a sourdough. Now to make this starter you want to combine 200 grams of white flour, preferably a strong bread flour, with 150 ml of water, and now for the tricky part, 3.5 grams of dry yeast or 7 grams of fresh yeast. Now for this reason, this is why I like to keep some small mini scales in the kitchen, and then give it a good mix to form a thick batter or a very wet dough. Then you want to cover and let this rise for around 6 hours or even overnight. This is going to help develop the yeasty flavour of the bread. Now, later, or the next day if you did it overnight, the dough should have risen quite a bit. Then you want to tip the dough into a stand mixer and add in an extra 200 grams of flour, 150 ml of water, 3.5 grams of yeast, or 7 if you are using fresh, and an additional 2 tablespoons of olive oil. Now once again, like most breads, you can do this by hand, but a stand mixer with a dough hook makes it a lot easier, as this is going to be a long knead of at least 10 to 15 minutes. Now you want to knead this in the stand mixer, or if you are willing, by hand, until you have a smooth, stretchy dough. Now because this is high hydration, this could get a little bit messy, so you probably want to use a wooden spoon or something if you're not using a stand mixer. Now after that you should have a smooth and very stretchy dough. Then you want to tip that into a oiled, preferably square tub that can hold around 3 litres, as this dough needs to rise for a couple of hours to get as much air in it as possible. Now you want to let this rise to around the height of the tub, which is why you want to use a preferably square one, because it's also going to help shape the loaf. And then you want to cover and let rise for 1 to 2 hours. Now once risen, you want to heavily dust a worktop with flour and carefully tip out the dough onto the flour. And now once again, even using a different flour, I had a very wet soft dough. Then you want to flour the top of the dough and flour a knife and cut it in half, shaping it into a baguette or ciabatta shape. Now it's a good thing I made 2 of these because I had a hard time moving the first one and knocked some of the air out. But if you do this as well, just reshape it and then carefully move the dough onto a baking tray. I found just edging it off the worktop onto the tray worked really well. And then dust the tops and let rise for an additional 15 minutes whilst you preheat your oven to 220 Celsius or 430 Fahrenheit. Once heated, place the loaves in the oven for 20 to 30 minutes until risen and golden on top, and then transfer to a wire rack to cool. Now once cooled, you want to use a brush to remove any excess flour. Now I noticed a lot of flour underneath my dough, as probably came from rolling the dough gently onto the baking tray from the countertop. Now you want to try and remove as much of that as possible, but leaving a light dusting on the loaves. Now unfortunately one of my loaves does kind of have the texture of, well, a ball sack, or tree bark, could be tree bark as well. But then you want to slice your loaves. Now I like my ciabatta with some olive oil and some balsamic vinegar to dip, or you can even serve this with some nice soup. Then simply serve and enjoy. And there you have it, a nice fresh ciabatta loaf. And that wraps up this week's video. Now as always, if you like what you saw, let me know down below with a like and a comment. If you are indeed new here, feel free to subscribe for free weekly cooking content, and I will see you all again next week. Thanks for watching.